entire village was submerged underwater. Let's try to find out which mistake caused this. The sea around the Greek coast had always whispered strange stories, and long before modern divers ever touched the waves, the fishermen of the nearby village spoke of a city that slept beneath the water, a place where the sun's reflection trembled over old stones and forgotten homes. Elara had heard those stories from her grandfather, who told them with the certainty of a man who believed in things he had never seen. As she grew older, she learned to dismiss myths, yet something about Pavlopetri continued to pull at her thoughts, as if the sea itself carried a memory that refused to fade. One early summer morning, when the water was so still it seemed like a sheet of glass, she stood on the rocky shore with a sense that something hidden beneath those depths was calling her by name. She felt an odd pressure in her chest, not fear, but recognition. Elara was a marine archaeologist, trained in universities that taught her to trust evidence, measurements, and data. But she also carried something deeper inside her, an intuition, sharper than logic, a sensitivity to the past that made her colleagues tease her for her sixth sense. Though she rejected the idea of destiny, she had to admit she felt connected to this place in a way she could not explain. Perhaps it was the stories of a thriving Bronze Age city, nearly 5,000 years old, that now rested silently under the waves. Perhaps it was the idea that people once lived, loved, traded, built homes, raised children on this very shoreline, and that in one long forgotten moment, the sea came and took everything. She tightened the straps of her diving gear, hearing the click of metal against metal, and walked toward the waiting boat. Her team was small. Nikos, a quiet but brilliant diver who seemed to understand the language of currents. Sophia, who could reconstruct ancient structures from fragments like an artist restoring a shattered painting, and Dr. Marin Holt, the project lead, who treated every discovery as if it were a heartbeat pulled from time itself. They greeted her with nods touched by the reverent stillness of anticipation. Today was different. They all felt it. The motor hummed to life, sending ripples across the still water. As the boat glided toward the survey site, Elara watched the surface shimmer with sunlight, each flicker like a fleeting glimpse of something just below. She imagined women in linen garments walking down ancient streets, vessels of clay stacked near doorways, children running beside shallow pools where merchants once washed their wares. She imagined laughter, arguments, songs, every sound swallowed by the sea for millennia. But she did not imagine fear, not yet. She had not reached the moment in her mind where everything changed for those long ago people. The ancient houses were there still, their foundations preserved by the gentle currents, their walls collapsed but not erased. It was as if the sea had decided to hide them, not destroy them. When they reached the dive point, Elara breathed deeply, preparing her mind. She slipped into the water, letting the coolness embrace her body, and descended slowly as the worlds above faded into blue silence. The deeper she went, the more she felt her pulse synchronize with the steady push of the tide. Shapes began to form beneath her, straight lines, unnatural to nature, the fingerprint of civilization. Pavlopetri appeared like a sleeping giant. Roads outlined like faint scars on the seabed, rectangular shadows marking homes, storage rooms, courtyards, and pathways that once carried thousands of footsteps. Her fins brushed the soft sand, lifting tiny clouds that drifted like ghosts. She swam over a wide-open courtyard where someone long ago might have prepared food for family or stored amphorae of oil. She traced her fingers along the corner of a stone that had withstood centuries of salt and storms. She felt a pulse beneath. Her glove, the kind that exists only in imagination, yet felt so real she withdrew her hand. Nico signaled to her from a distance, pointing toward a narrow structure half buried under sediment. She swam toward him, her light cutting through drifting particles. The structure was unlike the others. They had seen houses, workshops, and even what might have been a tomb. But this was something more refined, more deliberate. Smooth stone columns lay broken but recognizable. Intricate carvings wrapped around their edges. Sophia joined them, eyes widening behind her mask as she traced the patterns with her camera. Marin floated above them, watching with the intensity of someone who knew this could change everything they understood. The carvings depicted swirling shapes, waves wrapping around a single figure standing tall against the storm. The figure held a staff, and behind him or her were images of people gathered together, hands raised as if in prayer. It was not typical for this region. It was almost ritualistic, symbolic in a way that suggested stories, myths, or warnings. Elara touched the stone gently, as if afraid it might disintegrate under her fingertips. A sudden vibration passed through the water, a tremor, small but unmistakable. They all felt it, not dangerous, but unsettling. Pavlopetri rested near a seismically active zone, but tremors were rare. Elara's heart tightened. For a moment, she thought she heard something faint, distant, like a sigh carried from a world that no longer existed. She pushed the thought aside. They continued exploring, documenting each section with meticulous detail. Hours passed unnoticed in the quiet hum of underwater breath. At one point, Elara wandered slightly ahead of the others, drawn by a soft glimmer, near the edge of the ancient street. As she approached, she realized it was a doorway, a narrow archway preserved perfectly, as if time had not dared to touch it. She swam through, shining her light inside. The room was small, circular, with smooth walls that curved inward. In the center stood a stone basin, empty now but carved with symbols, matching those on the columns outside. She felt something stir in her, a familiarity that made her skin prickle. She placed her palm against the basin's rim, and suddenly an image flashed in her mind, not a hallucination, not a dream, but a vivid scene that filled her senses. She saw people running, water rising fast, wind screaming like a living beast. She saw homes collapsing, parents clinging to children, elders trying to lead others uphill only to be overtaken by the sea. She smelled smoke, heard voices shouting, warnings, felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. The basin glowed faintly in her vision, as if it once held water used for rituals to foresee disaster. Then the vision vanished, leaving her breathless and trembling. She withdrew her hand sharply, shaking her head. Logic told her it was exhaustion or imagination, but deep inside, she knew something else was happening, something connected to the ancient people who once lived here. Something about their final day remained imprinted in this place, waiting for someone to feel it. Nico has signaled for her to return to the group, and she followed, but the sensation lingered like a whisper. She could not shake. When they ascended, breaking through the surface, the world felt different, brighter, louder, too alive compared to the silent city below. She pulled off her mask, gasping for air, not because she lacked oxygen, but because she had felt something that reached beyond ordinary discovery. Back on the boat, Marin asked her if she was all right. Elara nodded, but she sensed her own lie. That night, she lay awake in the small coastal lodging they rented, listening to the waves crash against the shore. Each crash felt like an echo of the ancient catastrophe she had seen in her mind. She wondered how a city so advanced for its time could fall so completely, how people who had survived centuries of storms could be swept away in a single day. The sea outside roared softly, as if answering her question. She drifted into sleep, but her dreams were filled with water rushing through narrow streets, doors slamming under pressure, and a girl with dark hair standing atop a stone platform, holding a glowing bowl. The girl's lips moved, forming words Elara could not hear. Then the dream twisted violently. The sea arose, swallowing everything, and the girl's eyes met Elara's as if pleading for her to remember something important. Elara woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The sensation was too real to be dismissed. Something in Pavlopetri was still alive, not in the literal sense, but in memory, in energy, in the echo of a people who had tried to warn the future. She did not know what message lay hidden, but she felt compelled to return. The next morning, she told the team she wanted to dive earlier than planned. They agreed, sensing her urgency. When she entered the water again, the sea felt heavier, as if aware of her presence. She swam directly to the circular room, her pulse rising. As she approached, she saw something she had not noticed before, a faint shimmering inside the basin, like light filtered through moving water, but the basin was empty. This was not natural. She hovered closer, breath echoing in her ears. The shimmering grew, taking on thin strands of white glow that spiraled upward in slow motion. She reached out a trembling hand, and the moment her fingers brushed the glow, the world around her dissolved into blinding light. The blinding light softened slowly, dissolving into shapes, colors, and sounds that did not belong to the underwater world she had come from only moments earlier. Elara blinked, feeling sand beneath her feet, dry, warm sand, not the cold seabed. The air around her shimmered with heat, carrying the scent of herbs and fire and something sweet, like ripened fruit. She raised her hands in disbelief. There were bare no gloves, no diving suit, no mask. She stood in simple linen clothes, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her breath quickened as she realized she was no longer underwater. She was standing inside Pavlopetri as it once existed thousands of years ago, alive and whole. Voices echoed around her. A woman carrying a woven basket passed by her, smiling politely. A young boy ran past, chasing a dog that barked joyfully. The buildings that had been only stone outlines moments ago now towered with strong walls made of sun-baked brick, decorated with painted patterns in red and ochre. The circular room behind her was intact, the basin full of clear water shimmering. Under sunlight, everything was alive. She tried to speak, but no sound left her lips. The world around her felt too real, too vivid to be a hallucination. She turned to see a group of men fixing fishing nets, their laughter carrying on the wind. A merchant arranged a ferry of oil outside his shop. Women sat together weaving, their fingers moving rhythmically. The city was thriving, full of life and harmony. Elara walked slowly through the bustling streets, each step filling her with awe. She touched the walls, feeling their rough texture. She breathed the air deeply, trying to commit every scent to memory. She knew, somehow, that she had been drawn into the last days before the city's destruction. A shadow hung in the atmosphere, subtle but unmistakably a tension in the wind. In the low hum of conversation, she approached the central square, where a crowd had gathered around a stone platform. The same girl from her dream stood there, dark, hair flowing in the breeze, holding the glowing bowl. The girl's eyes lifted, locking onto Elara's with an intensity that sent chills through her. It was as if she had been waiting for her. The girl descended the steps and walked toward her, moving with calm purpose. She stopped a few feet away, studying Elara's face. "You felt the memory," she said softly, her voice steady. "You heard the call." Elara's mouth opened, but her voice was still trapped. The girl smiled gently and touched her shoulder. Instantly, Elara felt her voice return. "What is happening?" Elara whispered. "Where am I?" The girl motioned for her to follow. They walked toward a low stone building with painted symbols on its door. Inside, the air was cool, filled with the scent of burning herbs. The girl set the bowl on a pedestal, the water inside glowing faintly. She turned to Elara with deep sadness in her eyes. "You are seeing what was," she said. "The memory of Pavlopetri, preserved in the water, waiting for someone who can feel the past. The sea remembers everything. It remembers our final day." Elara swallowed, fear tightening her chest. "You know what will happen? Inozi city will drown." The girl nodded. "We tried to warn our people, but they would not listen." The earth trembled. The sea pulled back farther than it ever had. We knew the signs, the same signs our ancestors left for us long ago. But some believed the gods were angry. Others thought it was only another storm. We're prepared, but it was not enough. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the windows. The girl stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You cannot stop what is coming. Not here, but you can remember. You can tell the world what happened to us." Elara felt helpless. "Why me?" "Because you listened," the girl said. "Because you felt the echo. Many walk over memories without ever noticing. But you saw, so you were brought here." Elara looked into the glowing bowl. Scenes flickered across its surface. People running, the sea rising, buildings collapsing under violent waves. She saw mothers clutching their children, fathers trying to save their homes, elders guiding the injured uphill. She felt their terror as though it were her own. Tears blurred her vision. A deep rumble shook the room, causing dust to fall from the ceiling. The girl grabbed Elara's hand. "It is starting," she said. "You must come." They rushed outside. The sky had darkened with storm clouds gathering unnaturally fast. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. People shouted, pointing toward the horizon. Elara turned to look. The sea was pulling back. Far beyond the normal boundary of water, the ocean floor was exposed, shimmering under the dim light. Fish flopped helplessly on wet sand. Boats rested awkwardly on their sides. The air became eerily silent, as though the world were holding its breath. Then came the roar. A wall of water rose in the distance, higher than any wave she had ever seen, towering like a moving mountain. It raced toward the shore with terrifying speed. Panic erupted through the city. Families ran inland, abandoning homes and belongings. The girl pulled Elara along, but the ground shook violently, knocking them off balance. Elara looked back and saw the wave crashing into the outer houses, tearing through them like paper. Wooden beams snapped, clay walls shattered, and the waves swallowed entire alleyways. Screams filled the air. The wind turned icy as the sea devoured everything in its path. The girl pulled her to a rocky incline that rose above the town. But when they reached the halfway point, another tremor split the ground, opening a jagged crack that forced them apart. Elara stumbled backward, losing sight of the girl in the chaos. She shouted her name, but her voice drowned under the roar of destruction. The water surged closer, swallowing streets, people, memories. Elara's feet slipped as the ground crumbled beneath her. She reached for anything to hold on to, but her hand passed through empty air. The world blurred as the wave struck the hill, sweeping her off her feet. She felt herself being pulled underwater, tossed violently by currents, her lungs burning for air. A faint glow appeared through the darkness, the same glow from the basin. It grew brighter, swirling around her like a protective shell. She felt a force pulling her upward, separating her from the chaos, lifting her through layers of water and time. She broke the surface of the sea with a gasp. Her diving mask was back on her face. Her gear was intact. She floated above the ruins of Pavlopetri, the ancient city silent again beneath the waves. The water was calm, as if nothing had happened. Nikos's voice crackled through her earpiece, frantic. "Elara, we lost sight of you. Are you okay?" She looked down at the seafloor, heart pounding. In the exact spot where the circular room lay, a faint flicker of light shimmered once, then faded. "I'm here," she whispered. "I saw it. I saw everything." They guided her back to the boat, but Elara barely heard their words. She knew now that Pavlopetri was not just a ruin. It was a memory preserved in water, a message from people who had vanished beneath the sea, and she had been chosen to carry that memory forward. When she stepped onto the deck, Marin asked gently, "What did you find?" Elara looked toward the horizon, where the sea stretched calm and endless. "A story," she said softly, "one the world needs to hear."